Hello and welcome to WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. George Logan makes our region tick. At Toad's Place, he's known as lead guitarist in the Jimi Hendrix tribute band Electric Ladyland USA. At the Capitol, he's known as State Senator, a title he will keep after a close call. He's in the WNHH studio today to tell us all about that. Welcome back, George Logan. It's great to see you right before Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Paul. It's great to be here.
All right. And we want to thank Yale New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. So, George Logan, you have something to be thankful for this Thanksgiving. In addition to the usual family, friends, community, you had a close near-death experience, not really near-death, but near-electoral death experience in this election. Was it 85 or 65 votes you won by?
Well, my last count was 85, but I think the Secretary of State's office has 77. So I'll use that as the official number.
You know, some people like me who are naive, we still can't get over the fact that in elections there are different numbers.
Right.
They have recounts and a few numbers change. And I got insight in New Haven this year because we had so many problems at our ballot boxes that I was watching people at 2 a.m. try to blearily count by hand these ballots, and I saw why these numbers often get weird. So why is your count 85 and the Secretary of State 77? What are those 8 votes different?
Well, on election night, I have individuals at each of the polling locations throughout all 7 towns. And so the numbers come off of the machine.
Yeah, we do that too. We put people at every polling place.
Yeah, right. So we take the numbers and then we create our own tally sheets, right? So at the same time, the voter registration offices, they grab those numbers as well in each of the towns and they create their own tally sheet. So sometimes folks have an issue with transcribing the numbers, right, from the tally sheets. A human being has to put it on the tally sheet. So sometimes they transcribe the number wrong. Sometimes there's a transposition error. A 12 becomes 21, that sort of thing. And sometimes there's a math error.
We're going to get to an interesting error in a minute, but let's stick with this first one for now.
Sure.
So in the end, was it the absentee ballot vote that was different or the machine vote that was different between you and the Secretary of State's count?
The machines was pretty accurate. Most of the errors were in the tally sheets and coming up with looking at the absentee ballots and the same day registrations, the EDRs, election day registrations.
So I'm just wondering those 7 votes because we're going to get to something deeper in a minute. 250 votes, which was pretty mind-blowing. Yeah. But the 77 in the end that you are different Secretary of State, what are those 77 votes from where?
We're investigating that now because with the recount, again, we took all the numbers from all the voting locations, but then each town has to actually upload the revised numbers to the Secretary of State's office. So
in New Haven, they press save. They press send before save, and they have to redo them the next day.
Is that right? Yeah, that sort of thing happens. Yeah.
It's happened twice here.
Yeah. So, normally, though, this sort of thing happens on a very regular basis. This is nothing new. Mm-hmm. You have the election, the numbers come out, but usually one candidate's ahead by, 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 or 5,000 votes. So those fine-tuning corrections that are made before the Secretary of State's office certifies the results doesn't make a difference in the election. But this year we've mined, and we had a number of very close elections where these changes a day, 2 days after the election. Remember, in my case, up to just 2 days after the election, the new numbers were pretty much relatively accurate, right? And then we did the recount. So it's just that this brought light to it. And what's important is that every vote counts, right? And
but does it? You see, I'm convinced that not every vote counts because I'm convinced not every vote gets counted.
Well, I believe that at least in my district, I feel confident that every vote was counted for sure.
So there's still this 8 count different.
Right. Well, that still needs to be investigated. So we'll have to see why that's that difference.
But you're right. It's when the margin matters, like in Florida. Right. So Bob Stefanowski, the Republican governor, I thought did a really good thing because I see some poor losers sometimes. He was the opposite of a poor loser.
That's right.
He ran hard. A lot of us thought he was going to win for governor. And he had all these monitors in New Haven on election day. And at first we thought, God, they're trying to suppress the voters. It's like the South because they do that in the South. And it was the opposite here. There have been so many irregularities in New Haven. They just want to watch what was going on. So as the night was going on, we had just deep problems. You don't have to go into the show. You just look at them in the Independent. Went for days. And actually, his monitors and Democrats were getting along great because the Democrats were so happy the Republicans were there because they said everyone else would think we're stealing and cheating.
Right.
But they could see this is just a mess.
Right.
And we're doing our best. And they were monitoring it. But there was definitely a bevy of votes that were questionable with EDR in New Haven election day registration where they did this weird mass swearing and stuff. Right. So they were ready with a complaint. But as soon as Stefanowski saw the numbers, he saw that he clearly lost.
That's right.
So he wasn't going to fight over 1,000 votes when he lost by 65,000.
Exactly.
But in your case, was darn close.
It was.
So the first night we were told that you lost.
Mhm.
And the next day, your opponent, because you're a one-term incumbent in the 17th Senate District, it's quite a diverse district, Hampden, Ansonia, Derby, Woodbridge, Bethany, and Beacon Falls. You basically see all of America there.
Yeah, right. And Naugatuck as well. But yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
Naugatuck too.
Yeah,
Left that out. Okay.
Woodbridge, yeah.
And so George Cabrera was declared the winner. He went the next day to Hartford up to a reception for new legislators. He got called out in the middle, and they said, "Hey, we got some bad news from you. There was a major mistake." What did you go to bed thinking Tuesday night if you went to bed, and how did your Wednesday start?
So again, on my tally sheet the night of the election, I had my camp had us up 119 votes, and I was aware that my opponent's camp had me up about 98 votes. So both his tally sheet and my tally sheet had me as the winner. So I was very surprised that the next day he declared himself the winner.
So you went to bed thinking you won?
Yes, yeah.
Did you have a victory party that night?
No, I didn't have a victory party, but I certainly thanked my supporters and that sort of thing. But I made it clear that this is very close, and it was within the range of a recount. There probably would be a recount.
What was the percentage range?
It was less than half of 1%. So we had almost 37,000 people vote. And we're talking about a difference of, and my case was, I thought on election night, less than 119 votes. So that was well within the half of 1%, which would have been something like 187 votes. So I knew we were within that range. So I knew a recount was coming, and I knew that anything could happen in a recount as well. So I was thankful that we were on the right side of the vote tally at the end of the night. But I knew that there was going to be a recount, and anything could happen in 7
So when
towns.
did you find out that all of a sudden the Secretary of State's office was saying that you lost?
Yes, that was in the next morning. But even then, I wasn't super worried in terms of I knew what I had in my tally sheet, and I knew that corrections were going to be made, and I was relatively confident that our numbers were right. I was going to wait until I saw one of the towns that had numbers that were different than mine, and that
That's Ansonia.
Right. But a number of towns had corrections as well. Hampden made corrections, Bethany made corrections, Naugatuck made corrections, but Ansonia's was the biggest correction.
Right, in Ansonia there were 250 votes, if I'm not mistaken.
My understanding is that instead of putting a 2 for my opponent for absentee ballots in one district, instead of a 222 was written. So 222 instead of 2. And that's where I get into this whole, transcribing the information, from the tally sheets onto the from the machines to the
so
tally
all of a sudden that was enough to swing it, and your Democratic opponent declared victory. Why do you think that mistake was made?
I think it was human error. I mean, that's what I like to
You don't
believe.
think it was on purpose?
I mean, I have really no way of knowing for sure. I'm going to base it on human error because, again, other towns made errors as well. It was a little odd because it's my hometown. But the mistake.
You grew up in Ansonia?
Oh, no, I live in Ansonia with my family. Yeah, I grew up in New Haven, actually, in the hillside.
Oh, that's right. We've talked about that. Yep.
But the error was actually in favor of
moving
my
up
opponent.
now to Ansonia from New Haven.
There you no, New Haven's a great place to live. My mother still lives in New Haven as well.
So 222. What did you think when you heard that?
I thought there was a mistake and that it would be corrected. I think it was my camp that pointed that out to the Ansonia officials, and then they double checked, and sure enough, there was a transcribing error made there, and they corrected it.
So what point were you able to exhale and say, I'm reelected?
Not until the end of the recount, which was a 3-day process, and Hampden, being the biggest town, was one of the last.
Now, some people think, you care a lot about, you put a lot of effort into being a public official. It's hard to run for office and win. It's a lot of work, and your ego's at stake, right? And how did it feel for a whole week when you weren't sure?
Well,
how big a deal was this?
I had about a day and a half where I actually felt that, 187 votes. If that doesn't change soon, that's going to be hard to make up in a recount. That's what I've been told, right? So, I mean, I had a day and a half, and I, in my mind, said, well, I might actually not come out on top of this. But I'd be okay with that because I always say I'm not a career politician. I have a full-time job. I'm an engineer and executive at a local water utility. I'm still very involved in the community. I'm on the Griffin Hospital Board of Directors and YMCA and Boys and Crows Club and Junior Achievement. So still have a lot to do, and I would just do the same things I've been doing before I was elected in
I feel for
2016.
politicians because some elected officials feel like it's the end of the world if they're not elected aldermen, let's say. And they do some things that are just desperate to try to hold on to those jobs.
Yeah, I didn't have that
feeling.
feeling.
They're crushed and angry for years.
Yeah.
I remember Larry Denaris, when he was a Republican congressman in the last Republican elected New Haven in 1980. In 82, he lost and he didn't concede for days.
Wow.
And
wow.
he was making all sorts of wild charges and stuff.
Wow.
You know, I remember that.
Well, and throughout history, there are many successful politicians who have lost elections. I mean, you go back to Abraham Lincoln.
Most of them.
Yes,
it
absolutely.
takes losing first. Like John DeStefano lost his first mayor election, then
right.
he came back and he's mayor for 20 years.
Didn't give up, right? Exactly.
Bill Clinton.
Yep. And again, you can go all the way back to Abraham Lincoln. He was in despair. He lost so many elections. And guess what? Then he came in and they asked him, "Hey, why don't you run for president?" And he came in and won and was one of the most historical figures.
He made history.
He made history. Exactly.
We have a better country because of Abraham Lincoln.
That's right.
And we have George Logan in the studio here at Dateline, New Haven, WNHS-FM. George is the re-elected state senator from the 17th district, Hampden and Sodia, Derby, Woodbridge, Bethany, Beacon Falls, and Naugatuck. So now, why was this such a close election?
Well, I think it goes to show there's a lot of division within my district, right? I've got
and America, because we said your district is America, aka America.
I was going to extend that, absolutely, and Connecticut, as well, and the nation, and I've got the Naugatuck Valley, which has a different type of makeup than we have for example, in Hampden, which is a lot different than Woodbridge, and a lot of folks I think were looking at what was going on nationally. And I think a number of folks wanted to, make a statement. And even as much as I tried to indicate that, look, I don't have anything to do with Washington, right? I don't have any effect on what's going on in Washington.
Did you support Donald Trump? I forget.
Well, I mean, what I've done is I said, look, my job is to go to Hartford, right? And regardless of who's in the White House, whether it's Barack Obama or Donald Trump, my goal is to support policies that come out of Washington that help Connecticut. I'm in favor of those. Any policies that hurt Connecticut, I'm opposed to. For me to take sides in the presidential election, I shied away from doing that because for me, it's not a us against them. I'm here to represent Donald Trump supporters. I was here to represent Hillary Clinton supporters and Bernie Sanders supporters. I'm here to improve the lives of everyone living and working here in Connecticut.
So you think it was so close because this was a proxy race, the way it seemed like every race was in Connecticut this year. We spent all day interviewing voters in New Haven, which had a huge turnout for Ned Lamont. We didn't find a single one who said he was voting for Ned Lamont for governor. They were filling his name,
right?
But they were voting against Donald Trump,
right? No, there was some of that. I'm not going to blame all of it on that. I think some of it also has to do with the messaging, and I think I needed to get to certain districts more. And I'm going to learn.
You're everywhere.
Yeah, but everywhere. But if you
I checked you out. I mean, you got the pictures.
I tried.
I mean, even since the last couple of days, I've seen you in you got pictures in Hampden and the Valley and all these different events day and night.
I love the job, and I don't know any way of doing this but to get to where the people are and going to events. Within
so you
the
think
district.
you're not? I remember even you go on holidays to the games and stuff.
Absolutely, but let's take a look at again the demographics. Right, my district, Hampden, the southern part of Hampden, I got creamed.
Well, southern part of Hampden's gotten very liberal.
Right.
It's basically a new ward of New Haven.
Right.
They voted just as much for Hillary Clinton as did New Haven. They have elected very liberal state legislators like Josh Elliott, and they also have that's sort of a hotbed of the resistance, as it's called, where they were sending people out to races all over the state and they were very involved in your opponent's race. They wanted to have a response to Trump.
Agreed. So I've got to do more, I think, in that part of the district, that part of Hampden, and as a result, I'm going to be getting out there, and if I can't find the folks that live in those districts at events, I'm going to go knocking on doors, starting next spring to get the folks and talk to them. Let them know that, I'm not here to represent a political party. I'm here to represent each and every individual living in the district. I want to talk to folks and make sure I fully and clearly understand what their issues of concern and interest are. And I'm going to ask them, take a look and see during the session, where I stand on those issues that are of concern to them. And hopefully that they will keep that in mind when the next election rolls around and they see that I'm here.
I think you probably were the only Republican who met with that resistance group. I forget what it's called in Hampden.
Yeah, the Hampden Political Progressive Action Network, they're called. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of folks have told me, well, why are you going to meet with them for? So why? Because they're in Hampden and they asked me to come meet with them. I'm going to meet with anyone. I have no fear. I have no qualms with meeting with anyone that lives in my district.
Now, there are genuine, in addition to division, there's genuine different views on policy.
That's right.
So that's a very liberal pocket, and they were concerned about the state legislature having a Republican majority. So they were working hard in a lot of races, and the Democrats swept, as you know. This was the blue wave year. You were one of the few survivors there in close races. Right. Democrats now were divided in your state. We had an 18-18 split in your
Senate
chamber last year. Now it's going to be probably closer to 2/3 Democrat.
Right, that's correct.
So there was a feeling that on issues like taxation, right? So would you call yourself a conservative on taxation? You don't believe in raising taxes, right? You think that's an
absolutely
issue.
correct.
And there's a genuine policy difference of people who say they think it should be more revenue raised, highway tolls, things like that, to support more social services. That's an honest disagreement, right?
That's exactly right.
And your opponent had the more liberal view on that.
That's correct.
Do you think that that's why it was so close?
No, I don't. 'Cause I haven't. It's been hard for me to find within the district people within my district that want their taxes raised. They say, "Hey, Senator Logan, we want you to raise our property taxes. Senator Logan, please raise the sales tax."
But in fact, electronic tolls do get a majority in the polls.
Well, I will say this though: when I explain to folks, okay, what's your understanding of tolls? Most people that support tolls think that somebody else is going to be paying the tolls. And when they think someone else is paying the tolls, they're big thumbs up. But when I tell them we can't just put them on the borders, we can't just charge out-of-state drivers, we are going to be paying, upwards of 60, 75%, depending on which study you look at, is going to come out of our pocket. And if you were against a mileage tax, right, when that came out, where they would look at your odometer reading in January 1st and see how many miles you drove by December 1st, the 31st, and then they would tax you on the number of miles you drove, folks were adamantly against that. This is the same thing. It's just another tax, another way of getting money out of your pocket. And remember, once those tolls go in, toll fees only go up. You take a listen to our local, New York and Massachusetts. They just keep going up and up, and it's just another gimmick, another trick for taking money out of our pocket. And I think that we provide billions of dollars of tax revenue to the state of Connecticut. I think the state just has to do a better job of managing the money.
But why wouldn't we want that other money from drivers from other states to come through? We pay when we drive in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and New York. Why shouldn't New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island drivers pay in our state? And why shouldn't we pay some of the freight for fixing roads and stuff like that?
Well, so I would say, first of all, when we removed tolls about 30 or so years ago, we made a deal with the federal government. So right now, for every dollar in federal gas tax that we send to Washington, currently we get back a little over 70 cents for every dollar we send back. New York and Massachusetts, they get a little over 40 cents for every dollar they send back. So everyone wants to count the revenue, but no one's discounting the revenue that we're going to lose in terms of federal funding that we've been getting from the federal government. Also, 30 years ago, the federal government said, look, Connecticut, you're removing tolls, right? We don't want you to play any games and, 2 years or 4 years or 30 years from now, put tolls back in. The way the deal was written, we have to pay back the federal government for all of that extra money that they've been sending us in lieu of us having tolls. Now, that's not to say it has to all happen all at one time, but these are some of the discounts that we have to consider as well. Also, remember truckers. Truckers are already paying a tax for using our roads. We have a compact with Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. So we certainly can tax trucks and trucking companies more, but we are already taxing them for using our roads. And you look at Rhode Island's trying to just tax truckers additionally, and they're being sued for it as well. So I just think that families, residents are going to lose their minds if we install tolls and they have to pay an extra $3-5 a day per driver to go back and forth from work. I have a lot of folks.
Most people aren't going to be paying $3 to $5 a day to go back to work. Most people don't go on the interstates past where a toll place would be to go to work.
They're looking at 82 gantries, the latest study. 82 gantries. It's going to be on Route 8 if you travel on Route 8. If you travel on the Merritt Parkway, if you travel on 91, 95, 84, there are a lot of folks in my district that travel those roads. I mean, even my daughter, who just travels a few exits on Route 8 to go to her high school, would have to pay a toll as well. I've got folks who have a hard time just paying for gas to get from Hamden or the Greater New Haven area or the Naugatuck Valley to get down to Bridgeport and Stamford. Some go to Danbury, some go all the way to New York. And it's going to be a burden for folks. And also keep in mind, if you ever travel to Massachusetts or New York, I remember once my son goes to school in Boston. I traveled to Boston. I paid I got a bill for a toll for something like $6. I threw it on my bill pile. You have like, I don't know, 20 days or so.
They can't take it just automatically out of your credit card?
No, they send you the bill in the mail.
Because I never got charged Massachusetts. I have Easy Pass.
I have Easy Pass too, but I have Easy Pass as well. For some reason, I got a bill from
maybe you pay closer attention to what you're paying, whereas we just do the automatic.
Yeah. Well, and what happened is didn't pay within the 20 days. They threw an administrative fee of about $30 on top of that $5 or $6 toll. So when people start getting these bills or these fees, they're going to have a major fit, is my opinion. Again, when they realize that we are the ones who are going to be paying these tolls, not other people.
All right. And we're talking to George Logan, State Senator, reelected in the 17th District here on WNHH FM 103.5, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. So, George, tell me more about why you think the state had this blue wave. You think it was just about Trump? I mean, all statewide offices went blue.
Right.
Some were close. both chambers of legislation went about 2/3 blue. That's big.
Yeah, but I wouldn't put it on totally on the president, but I would say just the Washington politics in general. A lot of folks are fed up with what they're seeing on the news, on
And all
cable
politics is
TV.
becoming national rather than local.
Yes, yeah, and it's a problem. We made some great strides here in Connecticut with a tie in the Senate.
I wanted to ask you about that. You talk a lot about
Yes.
bipartisanship.
Yes.
Last time you were here, you were saying how happy you were that it was a bipartisan budget, that Democrats and Republicans had to work together to pass that.
Yes.
This past session, you were actually a great bipartisan bill started when you were at the Three Brothers Diner having breakfast with Herb Kolodny and Brendan Novak, two people who have prosthetic limbs.
Correct.
And they convinced you and then Ted Kennedy on the other side of the aisle, state senator from Branford, a Democrat,
Correct.
to champion legislation to have insurance companies cover prosthetic limbs.
That's correct.
And that happened bipartisan.
Absolutely.
Are you a real believer in that bipartisan? Because some people say fight for like the core beliefs of your party and get that agenda passed, like we're seeing in Washington.
I don't
where
believe
they don't work
I don't believe
together.
that at all. No. I am not. Again, I'm not. I'm not doing this to represent my any political party. I'm here to represent the issues that are important to the folks in my my district. And in that particular issue, I was working within my Senate caucus and even with my friends in the House as well on both sides of the aisle on just the fairness and the correctness of doing this. And it passed, I believe, almost unanimously because it was the right thing to do. And I'm constantly looking for issues or topics or bills that we can get bipartisan support.
What's on your radar this time?
Well, so right now we made some grounds the last couple sessions. We instituted and passed a spending cap, right? So the state doesn't spend more money than it has. A bonding cap, so we don't borrow more money than we have.
Don't we always get around that, though? Don't we just
a volatility cap, right? So we have all those in there. So I'm afraid that those strides are going to be rolled back. So I'm certainly concerned about that. So I'll be fighting as best I can to keep those in place because I think that some of the uptick in the economy that you're seeing here in Connecticut is a result of those bills, of those efforts that were passed with a big push from the Republican Party here in Connecticut and those fiscally conservative folks on the Democratic side. And I don't want to lose ground there because I think we'll be sliding back.
Well, what's going to be the leverage now? When you got a 2/3 majority and for Democrats both chambers, and you have a Democratic governor.
Right. Well, they don't have the 2/3 in the Senate, thanks to our win here in the 17th
you're the ones
district.
But they don't really need it as much, right? When there's a Democratic governor who's not going to veto, unless he'll veto. I don't know. Because Lamont's agreeing with you to the extent that he's saying that this is like the 7th and 8th inning of this recovery cycle, right, and that you can't start acting as though it's going to continue. Because a lot of one-time revenue came in because of the tax plan that rewarded people for bringing investments back to shore and paying some old bills, and that's going to disappear. That's exactly right. So that's why the deficit's still over $1 billion, but it's a lot better than the $3.5 to $5 billion that we were looking at. I thought it's still 3.5 for 2 years, back from 4.1. Well, I've heard it's lessening, and there's an expectation that revenues are going to be even higher this year as well, which will hopefully help to tone it down. So, as Republicans, part of your role going to be saying, guys, this is a year or two. Don't get us back in the position a year later that we've been in. That's exactly right. So I'm going to absolutely stick with that message as far as that goes, but I'm certainly going to have to compromise in a number of different areas. One, the minimum wage. It looks like that's going to be a priority for the Democrats. You're going to vote against that? No, I wouldn't say that. I would say I'm going to look to negotiate. I mean, just because a bill has a title that says, increase the minimum wage, I need to look at the details. If it's going to increase it over time, right? Okay, let's talk about that. I'm willing to take a look at that and see. So I'm not going to say off the bat I'm going to vote against and increase the minimum wage. I'm going to say I'm willing to listen and let's try to compromise and come up with something that hopefully is reasonable. Because clearly the message I received, particularly in Hamden, in the urban areas, and actually my mother actually got on my case that I should really look at. Mom got on your case. She really did. Yeah. What did she tell you? She felt that the minimum wage should be increased. So I said, Mom, I will absolutely take a look at it, and I will. So what does your mom do for a living? She's retired now. She was an administrative assistant at Yale Career Services for about 11 years, and she worked at La Clínica Hispana for about 12 years old. That's also affiliated with Yale, but she's retired now. She's 80 years old. She was administrative assistant. Is she still in the Hill? Yes, she is, right on Spring Street. Yeah. Okay. And she told you, and you said, Mom, I'll absolutely take a look at it. Absolutely. What will you be looking to negotiate? Well, an increase over time, right? And so the amount of the increase over time. Phase in. Yeah. They're talking about $15 an hour and they're talking about, I think, phasing it in over several years.
Right. So that's something I could certainly look at and consider.
But
Absolutely.
will they need you? Will you have leverage? Do you think there'll be enough Democrats who also don't support a minimum wage hike?
Well, I mean, if you listen to Governor-elect Lamont, he's talking about working across the aisle. He has Republicans on his transition team. He wants to do things in a bipartisan way. And I'm going to, at this point, take his word for it. And I certainly like to think that he's going to listen to some of the ideas coming from my side of the aisle, from the
I
Republicans.
did notice they had Erin Stewart on there, who I guess
Yes,
some
right.
Republicans don't consider a Republican because she gets Latino votes and union votes and stuff.
She's absolutely a Republican. She's 100% a Republican. We're not going to just consider Republicans that are perhaps super conservative. We also have moderate Republicans as well, and they are Republicans. I'm a moderate Republican as well, but she's just as much a Republican as anyone else in the party.
What other issues, George Logan, are you looking for to negotiate on that you think are going to be moving away from the original GOP agenda?
Well, paid family medical leave.
Yeah,
that's another one. We have to look at it. I mean, last.
What did Mom say about that?
She didn't have much of a comment on that. A relatively new concept for her from her day and age. But as far as paid family medical leave, again, the bill just can't have that title on it. We have to take a look at it. Like, for example, there was a bill that was bouncing around the last session. It didn't get to the full votes that it on the floor that it needed in either the House or the Senate. But it went down to companies with just 2 employees. And I would say 2 employees. How can you have paid family medical leave for a company with 2 employees? So what happens if they're both skilled workers and one goes on paid family medical leave, right? And then the other one decides to go a week later. How's that going to work? So the business is just.
So where would you like to see the cutoff?
Well, again, it's part of the negotiation. Whether it's I think I would start with 50. But and it depends. And is it going to be paid by the employee as a deduction, or is it going to be paid by the employer, or is it a shared kind of thing? All of those things need to be worked out. Who's going to pay for this paid family medical leave fund that the state is most likely going to have?
Eugene Driscoll edits our Valley edition.
What was that again?
Eugene Driscoll, the editor of the Valley Independent Sentinel.
No.
Eugene's the guy who edits our other edition in the Valley and Ansonia and all that. He's a great guy, and I hope he doesn't mind talking out of turn. So years ago, we're a small shop. We're well under 50, our company. And Eugene, when he had his wife's son, the first kid, we forced him to go on parental leave paid.
Right.
And it was election day, and he couldn't stand not covering the election. He's a great father. And so we sent people there to cover the election, and he posted something on Facebook saying, I just happened to be, first took a picture of his blank wall and said, I'm climbing the wall, so the election's here. They won't let me cover it. And then he said, I just happened to run into the mayor running, or whoever was running for re-election at the store, and he put a live video of. He really wanted to work. But I felt that we had to show a precedent that I think you should be paid family leave everywhere.
Yes,
I agree with your point that there should, as a matter of law, maybe the size of the company has to be, I think everyone would agree, looked at. But and the truth is, election coverage did return to being a lot better when he covered the next elections.
And I think paid family medical leave is a good plan. I mean, I'm not against paid family medical leave. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of employers being able to afford it. If you have a company of under 50 people and you can afford it, I think you should have a paid family medical leave plan. The issue here is mandating it, right, without any real help from the state and trying to small businesses oftentimes have very small profit margins.
Mm-hmm.
They can't afford it. So that's where my issue is. I think we need to have policies that are business friendly. And again, if you have a paid family medical leave plan, and depending on how it's set up, and an employer only has 2 employees, you could really be putting a company out of business, literally, with paid family medical leave.
George, any other issues on which you see an effort you're going to make on bipartisanship?
Huge, yeah, absolutely. Education funding is a really big deal in our district, in my district, and in Connecticut. Towns like Hamden, Ansonia, Derby, Naugatuck, really big.
So the Democratic mayors told Ned Lamont, the governor-elect, that they also are concerned about education funding because they said the formula has been frozen at a level based on old enrollment numbers. So in New Haven, we have more students than there used to be. Some towns have lost students. But those towns are getting the same amount they used to get. New Haven's getting the same amount they used to get. Is that your concern, or you have a different concern?
No, I have a much different concern. Here has been our issue with the education cost sharing formula. It hasn't been the formula because we have been modifying the formula. It has been our governor. Governor Malloy has chosen not to go by the ECS formula, and he has been picking and choosing winners and losers for for various towns. That has been the issue that we've had with education funding. That is why Hamden has been short changed. that is why other towns have been shortchanged.
Well, 1 year,
as well.
2 years ago, Hamden got the big extra at the end because Brian Sharkey was still there as a
Right,
goes
right.
to that in the back room.
Right, and that's the sort of thing we need to move away from.
So what's the alternative?
The alternative is to have an education cost sharing formula that we all live by and abide by. And we even put a bill that passed the Senate and the House that wouldn't allow Governor Malloy to change or do these holdbacks from education funding based on the formula. And he vetoed it, and then the legislature sustained the veto, right? So we weren't able to implement that. And that would not just have affect Governor Malloy, any future governors
Would
as
you
well.
tweak the formula though,
Absolutely.
to update it?
That's part of the process. Every single year, there's a committee that takes a look at the formula, and based on what changes over time, it's tweaked. For example, the formula is based on whether enrollment is increasing or decreasing, how many students you have for English as a second language. It includes poverty rate, it includes all kinds of factors, and those factors absolutely should be looked at every year and tweaked. But we need to have a formula that's fair, that folks can understand, and that's implemented so that we have equitable funding for our schools throughout Connecticut.
We're talking to George Logan, the re-elected landslide Logan.
Yes, hey, you heard about that.
Yeah, landslide Logan, re-elected 17th State Senate District, keeping a Republican presence at the legislature and hoping to having input on a broader debate on policies. Here goes in. So the other day you were in an opioid forum.
Yes,
that's another issue that really isn't a partisan issue.
Right,
I would argue. What are you hearing there, and where do you see as some help as we could attack the largest killer now more than drunk driving accidents?
Yeah. As you know, many months back, I had an opioids forum in Hamden. Brought in a commissioner of the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. A lot of folks came down. What we have been seeing is that the number of addicts and deaths associated with opioids. Drug addiction has been going up and steadily and quicker, faster than what's available for treatment. So I am certainly glad to say that Governor Malloy over the last last year or so, began to focus on it more. And we need to keep up to have available treatment for folks. And education is extremely important in my book. Education for students in elementary school, middle school, high school, doctors who are prescribing these opioids. I had foot surgery a few years back. I received 2 prescriptions. One was OxyContin, and at the same time, my doctor gave me Percocet. He said, if this doesn't work, use the other one. I had no idea what I was taking.
See, I get too scared. I won't take something like OxyContin.
I was so I didn't know.
Get hooked.
I was so loopy. I took one pill, and I was absolutely. And I said, "What is this?" I looked at it was OxyContin. So let me look at the alternative. It was Percocet. So I stopped taking that. I started using Advil. It's it's something that and so what do we do?
And you're lucky because some people, if they take it once, right, you're hooked.
That's right.
Based on your biology.
It's very strong stuff.
Yeah,
absolutely. So we have instituted new rules, right? We passed laws so where it would limit the amount of prescriptions that doctors can give patients. And also they have to educate the patient in terms of what it is that they're actually prescribing to them. So it has to be attacked from all sides, and we need to do a lot more and be more consistent about it. We need more freedom. We need more commercials, radio ads. We need all of that. This opioid epidemic is affecting folks throughout all economic and social lines here and graves here.
Yeah, it is indeed. I saw you, George, at the Jewish Community Center after the massacre of Jewish congregants in Pittsburgh by a gunman. And then since that, in your district, that issue has been raised again, anti-Semitism at Amity High School.
That's correct.
Where there have been incidents of swastikas and chanting, "We are the Nazis" by the football players in the hall, and some fights, I guess. What's going on there, and what are you picking up there, and what do you think needs to be done?
Yeah, so next week on Wednesday, there's going to be a meeting with the Parent-Teacher Association in the community, and we're going to talk about that. We have to have zero tolerance for bigotry, racism. During the last session, we passed a bill.
The Holocaust Education Bill.
Which
does matter a lot to us Jews because the last survivors are dying out, and there's been such an aggressive campaign to Holocaust denial.
That's right.
It's going to be hard to make people think it even happened.
And a lot of young folks are just not aware of the Holocaust, and it's very important that our young folks are aware because you know what happens. If you forget your history, many times a lot of the bad aspects of it seem to repeat itself. And so I think it's important that again our students get this sort of information and education at a young age so that they understand and do not become desensitized, to bigotry.
So what was going on at Amity? Why is this happening?
Well, I mean, not exactly sure, but we knew that there was a limited number of students who just did something that was absolutely horrible. And
They
really,
were also harassing a Pakistani student, calling him up middle of the night, saying he's a terrorist, and then the gay student they were harassing.
that's right. That's right. So it's not an issue, just for.
But they were also
one
doing
group of folks.
the swastika Nazi.
Absolutely. And I think we need to be vigilant. And like, for example, the response from the school system. If you see that sort of thing happening, you got to address it right away.
They waited. They were told their initial response. They didn't tell you what really happened. It like was worse than almost not being told.
Exactly.
The word I'm getting, I don't know if this is accurate, is that these weren't true white supremacist kids. These were kids who were kind of troubled kids, troubled homes, who were obnoxious and bullies, and they thought this was funny.
Right.
Is that your sense?
That's a bit of my sense, but I don't really buy that completely. When someone puts a swastika on a desk or on a wall or graffiti, they know what they're putting. They made a choice to put that symbol or that emblem. So we have to have a zero tolerance, no tolerance. It needs to be handled appropriately, and it needs to be handled appropriately in terms of the perpetrators and by the administration or the company or anyone of responsibility and power that can actually make an effect in terms of what's going on, what's happening.
George, what's going on with your band? You still playing with Electric Ladyland?
Absolutely, yes. For example, we have a gig on December 28th at the Toad's Place. Shameless plug there. We'll be going on about 9 o'clock on December 28th. We just played last week at the flamboyant, world-famous Pit Stop Cafe in Milford last week and had a good showing. So we play about once every couple months or
How much
so.
do you rehearse?
I play my guitar every day.
You do play every day?
Yeah, almost. Sometimes maybe just 10 or 15 minutes. You're doing scales and chords, but I play every day. The band, we get together, maybe once a month, if that. But we've been playing together for over 15 years.
And it's mostly the Hendrix songbook?
Yes, and some originals. So I sneak in my original songs.
Oh, what are your originals about?
What are they about? Various things. Love, the environment, whatever comes to mind. I usually write them, myself.
And are they hard rock? Are they blues?
They're I call them blues rock. Yes, blues rock songs. Yeah, but I have some ballads as well.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. I'm working on a new album. I'm working on an original album.
I want to hear it when you come out.
You got it, Paul. Absolutely. Okay. I'll make sure you get a copy.
All right. What do you listen to these days? What's new out music that you like?
I'm now with all the YouTube and
I discover a lot of groups on YouTube I would have never heard about. Yeah. And then they show you the ones that are similar.
Yeah, a lot of these.
It's even better than Pandora that way.
Yeah. Unsung heroes. I'm going back and listening to a lot of documentaries from the bands from the 60s and 70s. The latest one I listened to was the Dramatics. So it's all very interesting. Oh, I heard one on Heatwave. So I like the history of music. To me is a fascinating.
So you're a classic rock guy.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, and I like funk as well. Yeah, too.
Yeah, I like funk too. Yeah. All right. Any other legislation you have planned for the upcoming session?
Well, I'm working on that now. Again, around the area of education, healthcare, veterans. So I'm meeting with groups now to put together my legislative priorities and the bills I'm going to submit, and also considering the fact that we have a different makeup in the legislature as well. So it's important that I put forward bills that have a shot, and can see the light of a day as well. So I'm working with folks across the aisle as well in those areas that I think are very important.
And any days off planned? Are you still going to the football game at Sonia Derby on Thursday?
That I am, right. So Hamden's game was moved to today at 6 o'clock. Hamden against Notre Dame, which is my alma mater. So I'm a little conflicted there.
Who are you going to root for?
I'm going to root for Hamden for sure.
But kind of duck when you see your old friends.
No. So, I mean, what I root for is for a fun, safe game where no one gets hurt. Right. So that's my main.
Are you thinking of higher office any day? Would you want to be in the state ticket?
Well, throughout my life, what I've done is I've prepared myself to take advantage of opportunities that present themselves. Right. Whether I was in middle school was to get to a good high school to get to a good college. I didn't know where I was going to work, but I knew I wanted to be an engineer, so I studied hard to be an engineer. And I've been working in the community. I'm working as a state senator. Who knows what the lay of the land is going to be in 2 years? But right now, my goal is to run. Right now, I see myself running for re-election in the state Senate. But we have to see, what unveils over the next couple of years.
Well, Charles Logan, it's really been great. I'm so happy you made time for us before Thanksgiving again this year, just like last year. What are you thankful for this Thanksgiving?
I'm thankful for having a healthy family. I'm thankful and have gratitude for all my supporters in the 17th district. I'm thankful that I can give back to my community and my state in this way. It's a privilege and an honor to serve the folks here in Connecticut. I'm looking forward to seeing lots of folks and families and friends on Thanksgiving Day and attending as many of these football games as I can get to.
All right. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Paul.
And thanks, everyone, for listening. Thanks to Yale New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free. Hamden New Haven Group. From the group CD, A Plea for Peace. Now, we know what it's like to be free. We just got to remember to book our flight. Book your flight with us all day long here, and have a great Thanksgiving.
Very nice.
From your community radio station, WNHH FM.